Hi, I'm Frankie, and in this video, I'm going to share with you what Azure API Management policies are, and how you can create and use them for your APIs. This series is based on the Azure API Management hands-on lab. If you want to follow along or do it on your own, you can find a link to it in the description. First, what is a policy? Well, an Azure API Management policy is a statement that, when implemented, will modify the behavior of an API. These policies can take place at multiple different levels or scopes. There is the global scope that all APIs can get policies applied to. There is the product scope where you could apply policies to a specific product. You could also apply policies to a specific API. And you could also apply policies to a specific operation on a specific API. You can apply a policy to any API request by adding it to the inbound section at any of these different levels. Similarly, you can apply a policy to the outbound section at any of these levels to affect the API response. There is a backend section for the policies that's reserved for forwarding a request, or the forward request policy. And there's also the ability to add policies when there's an error from the backend service. Policies are in XML format, and we can make changes to the way our policies are executed and configured by adding C# expressions. These C# expressions get access to the request or response context that we can then use to modify our policies. Here's an example. In this XML snippet, we have a set header policy where the value for the header that's being set is coming from the access we have to the context variable. This context is giving us access to the user ID and the region that the deployment for the Azure API Management instance is currently in. We can also determine the order in which our policies take place by taking advantage of the base element. This base element represents the policies that take place at a scope above the current scope. For example, let's say this XML snippet takes place at a product level, where the only level above it is the global level. Policies take place from top to bottom. So when the inbound policies execute, the product cross-domain policy would execute, and then because base is after, all of the global level inbound policies would execute, and then this product's find and replace policy would then execute. There are a lot of policies, and in the coming videos, I'll show you how you can implement several of them. Let's look at where these policies take place. At a global level, at the APIs page, I can select all APIs to make changes to APIs at a global level. If I want to make changes to APIs at a product level, I can go to Products, I can select a product, and then I can select its policies. This is where I can make changes to policies at a product level. Going back to the APIs, if I want to make changes to an API level policy, I can select an API, and as long as all operations are selected, I'll make changes to policies at an API level. And if I want to make changes to an API operation, I can select an API operation and make changes to policies at an API level. Now let's add a policy and see it in action. This getRandomColor operation allows us to get a random color. I can send it multiple times and get different kinds of colors, but say I wanted to get the same color for a period of time, I could add a caching policy. Let's do that now. I can come over to inbound processing. I'll click add policy, and I'll see a list of different types of inbound policies I can add. I want to add a cache and response policy. When adding the caching policy, I have the option to just add how many seconds I want the response to be cached. I also have some more granular permissions if I want to add those as well. I'll stick to basic, and I will just add a 15-second caching policy. I'll save this, and I can see now that the cache lookup has been created, and also this cache store has been created. If I want to see what this looks like in the XML format, I can hit this policy code editor icon where I can see the inbound cache lookup and the outbound cache store, which will take place for 15 seconds. To see this working, we have a colors website that will make calls to our random color API and display the color it gets in response as a random dot with the color that it gets back. Normally, without that caching policy, we could have this request go, and there will be random colors that it gets in response all across these dots. With the caching policy, we should see the same color across the randomly selected dots for 15 seconds. If you want to see how this works, in our last video, we showed how you can go to the config settings for this website and add the API URL that you can find as a user on the developer portal with their subscription key from their profile. Note, you should never share these subscription keys with anyone. I'm only showing you mine because it won't exist when this video is published. Now let's see this work. When I start this, I should see the same color for about 15 seconds. And I see the same color being used, meaning our caching policy is working. These are the basics of Azure API Management policies, which are a big part of what make the service so valuable. In the coming videos, I'll be going over more examples of how to implement other policies. If this video was helpful for you, please like it and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And if you missed any of the past Azure API Management videos I've put together, you can find some of those here. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.